She's hard place to get into now. Straight up. That's the best decision I ever made. My last week I've been like that. I'm sending to lunch. Beagle, Beagle over on that's first.
Go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody. I'd like to start out by several of us met yesterday, but the broader group was not here and we weren't webcasting. So I would just like to welcome General Furness as our assistant. We're delighted you're on board. And I know that I speak for the whole board that we look forward to working with you and your administration and doing what's in the best interest of the institute. That's sir, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, sir. I'm delighted to be here. My family and I have been here since the 12th. Still getting moved in, but the hospitality here in Lexington and on post has been exceptional. We were graciously received, and that has made the transition pretty easy for our 22nd move. So I have only been in the seat since the 15th. So just a little over a week. That was a very busy week last week, culminated with the game in Richmond, which I thought our cadets, both on the field and in the stands, quitted the institute rather well. Man, the scoreboard wasn't in our favor, but the team never quit. Showed great grit, tenacity all the way to the very end. So I was proud of them, even though they had a 4.5 hour intermission period, which was interesting to say the least. I've been very pleased since I've been here with both, first and foremost, cadet interaction. It's been exceptional. We have some exceptionally gifted, fine young men and women that are wearing our cadet uniform here and undergoing this process. And I think, I always tell people, we certainly have some things to, tweak and fix and adjust, but these are first world problems. Okay. The product I've been exceptionally pleased with. I've also been exceptionally pleased with the team that has surrounded me, both from the alumni agencies, but also the Smith Hall staff. All three legs of the stool are doing the right thing, focused on the right thing. And I'm pleased to take the helm and look forward to working with you all in the future. Thank you.
Morning. I just wanted to provide a brief update on the activities that occurred over the summer. This will be very, very brief, but I think it represents just the signal of our overall continuity and the level of effort that took place over the summertime. So I just wanted to provide a few highlights of the summer undergraduate research. So this is the engagement of the faculty with the cadets. 36 different projects that took place over summer session 1 and summer session 2. I think if you get a chance to over time through Honors Week and other opportunities just to see the types of activities that cadets get engaged with and interface in the labs and the research projects and work with their faculty. This just represents that this strong connection between the faculty and the cadets. Very, very proud of this undergraduate research initiative that takes place each summer. A number of cadets traveled and studied abroad. Another part of just the overall global engagement, opportunities to get out, see other cultures. Some of those involve some significant language immersion, other cultural immersions. just fantastic experiences. This is largely under the leadership of General Mareshi. His team, I know he's had opportunity over the summer months to go and visit a number of these programs, but strong relationships, strong coordination, a lot of preparation and effort to execute these programs. So just highlight those types of programs that cadets were involved in over the summer. There was a summer undergraduate entrepreneurship program, a newer initiative that takes place primarily at the ECBU department, but spreading across the post with cadets getting involved in entrepreneurship type activities. Not listed on here is also the college orientation workshop, the CAL program with Gene Williams, class of 74. A really fantastic initiative and program that's been taking place now. We're I think entering our third decade of that program, but a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, interface with his program into the barracks with the summer sessions taking place. We also have the summer transition program, very successful program. Again, a lot of work with the faculty coming in, leading that program, staff on the Commandant side, driving not only the academic piece, but the fitness elements of the cadets that come in over the summertime. Very robust, very exciting. So watch all that. If I were just to take you to it, just in your mind's eye, just put yourself back in the summertime and picture cadets, these new cadets moving their way to classes, breaking in boots and shoes. So you got shorts and a t-shirt and combat boots on some days, and just the rhythm of watching all that, the early morning PT, all the activity, excitement that's bringing. That one is always a highlight to watch the summer transition program as they navigate through the institute, start to feel something, that sense of esprit de corps, and navigate their way to successful matriculation. United States Naval Academy Command and Seamanship Training Squadron, and then we also participated in the 250th anniversary of Army, which a number of you had a chance to watch that on television, on the participation of the cadets that in the cadet uniform, looking very, very sharp. We'll take you on a tour later this afternoon to highlight the summer projects. Just put a couple things here, but there are projects that you won't see. The firing range, the hydrotherapy room, some of these other places, we won't get a chance to get to all of them, but been a tremendous amount of coordination and effort that's taken place to execute, bring out these projects. I'd like to jokingly but it is serious. It is always a fight on the day after graduation to watch all the contractors coming in. They're all fighting for lay down space and parking spaces, and we're sort of like, hey, don't fight. We'll get parking spaces for all. But it's a lot of energy that comes in as everybody's trying to meet these deadlines and turn these projects over. Time the kids come back in the fall. I just want to recognize the tremendous amount of work and everything that took place from the team and the summer activities. Brief, I just know that there was still a very, very intensive, heavy amount of summer activity that took place across the post, across the lines of effort. Subject to any questions you have, this is the briefing on the summer. Thank you. So look ahead of dates, but you all have that as well.
Morning. We'll provide you a brief update on some things going on academic program. So as I like to do at this meeting is just give you an update on academic performance over time. And if you look at this column, that's the previous academic year just concluded, but you can see the previous 4 years. So GPAs, they bounce around, but no upward trend like we see at sustained upward trend as we see at some other institutions. But the normal thing, right, by the time you get to the first class, second first class, GPAs are trending up. Students get through that year and through the third class year. So on the right, data about suspended and ACPRO cadets, and there's a little bit of trend up in ACPRO over the last few years, which we're trying to get at. That's a little troublesome because the rest of the core is shrunk a little bit, so the numbers are going up. But I'll talk to you in just a moment about some of the things we have going on that we're working on to try to help get those cadets off of ACPRO. A lot of data here, so I'm not going to walk through it all, but I want to talk briefly in the next couple of slides about what we started last year, that academic recovery program. This is out of the Miller Academic Center. And this is a program that is to require cadets on academic probation to go to the MAC for some additional support, not just say, hey, go to the MAC and get some support. If you're on ACPRO, you have to go to support. There's lots of reasons a cadet can be on ACPRO. They have standards for how many hours they must earn in an academic year, new hours. The way cadets get tripped up oftentimes. New hours means new classes, but if you have a class that's a C or better requirement, you get a D in it, the system says you got your 3 hours. So when you retake it and get a C or better, you don't get 3 more hours. That sometimes trips up cadets because they retake the class, but it doesn't add their cumulative hours. So they can fall short of cumulative hours, cumulative GPA, major GPA, yearly hours, lots of reasons. And there's a breakdown of most popular cumulative hours and cumulative GPA falling short of. There is standing past over the classes. The numbers don't always add. So as an example, total 56. And if you add up 21 plus 34 plus 2, you don't get 56. Because 21 plus 34 is 55, plus 2 is 57. But if you take the 2 out and add 55, how do you get to 56? Well, there was one cadet who came back in the spring, was not here in the fall, who was a readmit, but he came back on ACPRO, which adds to the ACPRO number. So you'll see some things like that. Of the cadets that went through the program, so when we got to spring 25, we had 96 cadets. So that was cadets who started in the fall on ACPRO, who didn't get off of ACPRO, plus the rats who joined them on ACPRO last spring. 44% or 46% could not get good standing by spring, no matter what they did. They would have to go to summer school. But of the 44, 23 of them, 23 cadets did receive good standing, 11 more through summer, 32 remain on ACPRO, and there were 30 suspended for the fall. Yeah, if you go back on the slide, 30 doesn't match. So again, if you're going 3 to 5, 4, 1. 37 suspended cadets. Again, that there are cadets, 30 were on ACPRO, 37 joined them who weren't on ACPRO, who had a rough year and joined them in the suspension league. So for this year, we made some changes to the academic recovery program. We've made it more individualized. Last year was the first year and it was somewhat standardized. But if you think about it, there's different reasons a cadet might be on ACPRO, especially when you talk about rats. In the spring, it could be they have poor study skills. It could be that they haven't figured out how to manage their calendar. It could be that they're having trouble reading comprehension, all sorts of things. So for that. So we've individualized it to each cadet for this year. And just a reminder, cadets sign a contract of what they have to do. 3 cadets last January worked themselves off of ACPRO, did not do what their contract required, so they stayed on ACPRO for the spring. Message has gone out. But I still have to chase cadets down. I've got 5 right now who haven't attended to the MAC yet, so I'm going to be asking them to come visit me next week. Wait out. If you don't do this, you're going to be on ACPRO for the whole year, no matter what you do academically. So, SAC's accreditation, lots of information here, just a couple highlights. We have now with, for Andrew Luna and his team, the second round draft material, and they are busy putting it all together. What does that mean? Everything that is documented in the 60 different standards we have to apply with, not 68 because we don't have graduate program or online programs. There have to be links to all the additional information, and those have to be PDF, not live links. So, and it has to get you to the right spot in that link. So all the people who are participating have provided that information. Now Andrew and his team are through, make sure they're PDFs, make sure the links work. And we'll have that in good draft form probably by the end of October. And we're going to hire a outside consultant to give us feedback. Come back in January, February, make some final changes where needed, and then submit to SACS on March 1st, by March 1st, 2026, the deadline. In June, July, we'll have an offsite committee review document, provide feedback by the end of the summer. They'll give us a chance to make any edits if we want to or need to. And then the onsite team will visit next October, 5th through 8th. And then initial report, final report, official final report in spring of. And 3 possibilities, no recommendations, everything's great, some recommendations where there might be something not compliant, and a probation. We don't anticipate probation. Like to think if there's any recommendations, we'll get those in the offsite committee and be able to. And then the quality enhancement plan, this is part of every 10 years with SACS. And ours is focused on experiential learning. So we have many cadets who are already participating in global ed or in undergraduate research or with internships, but we want to expand it out. We'd love it that we'd like to have it that every cadet has at least one experiential experience. And so the goal is to build this out across all departments, all cadets, across their cadetship, consistent with forging 21st century leader, one of the academic components of the plan. One change from SACS, we have a new president of SACS, and Andrew, I guess I call it doing a review of everything they do. And part of that is SACS has announced a moratorium on those schools going through accreditation this year and next on having to submit a QEP. So we had the option of backing away from this. This just happened last week. But we've decided to continue on because this is important, whether there's a QEP or not. We'll submit it as if it was part of the compliance report. And what we'll get from SACS is a reviewer who'll give us free consulting work on what we put together, but it won't matter for the compliance certification we're used to. So that may change again in a year or two when the new president of the board makes some decisions, but we'll forge on with this as if it was required because it's good for cadets. Subject to questions?
Anticipate anybody from Sept COC or the committee chair visiting us before the October next year on-site visit?
I think they usually do.
No, they do not.
I think at these, at ABET and AACSB, that's something that often happens. Not at some. But the offsite review is, well, years ago, they didn't have an offsite review team that gave every school a chance to respond to some already deficiencies, try to correct those before the final visit. That's around 20 years ago. I think that's.
Yeah, it's been something around 15 years and traditionally the offsite always finds more against an institution than the onsite does because the offsite, they've got to look at 4 institutions at the same time. And they don't have the opportunity of contacting the institution to ask any follow-up questions. So they tend to find more things, and then that allows us to get together and figure out a plan of action for when the on-site team comes in October.
I've served on an offsite committee in the past couple of years. And it's exactly that. But we find a lot of little things. Oh, this link doesn't work, or you're missing some data evidence in this particular standard and really need to address this. So you get a lot of that, which is helpful because you used to get that at the onsite and then left with the risk that you might have a lot of efficiencies. So, other questions?
General, I want to commend y'all on that cadet academic recovery program. We had the substantial drop in enrollment, and as a result, our acceptance rate went up for a couple of years. We knew that could cause a problem academically. Y'all prepared for it, and the data suggests that faculty certainly didn't lower their standards and held the cadets to the same rigorous performance levels. So you'd expect to see the number on Act Pro go up, which it did. But y'all worked through it, worked with the cadets, and the suspension numbers didn't go up. So well done.
I'll add also that I appreciate the compliments. Team worked very hard. One addition that this year we're going to try to intervene this semester. The first quarter grades due Friday. Identify especially rats who are struggling early and them into the MAC and see if we can find why they're. You could be getting on Act Pro, that's even better. Thank you. Thank you.
General updates for you this morning on strategic enrollment management. In terms of recruitment, we're still adjusting our targeted populations of who we're actually going to go after and getting them to show their interest or acknowledging their interest in VMI. We're continuing to improve the CRM. That is our customer relationship management. That's how they apply for VMI. So we continue to tweak that. We have parents, barracks-bound sites. We're starting a nurturing campaign. We want to get to them a little bit earlier, freshman, sophomore level, especially if they're going for ROTC scholarships at the national level. We really need them to be prepared early on in their high school career. And then working with areas across post on marketing efforts, and that includes Amy Getz and her team. It includes Sherry Wallace and her team as well. We're getting ready to tackle with athletics, although they're doing a bang up job on what they have going on, but we're incorporating all of that into what we do in enrollment management as well. In terms of retention, coordination of efforts across post, the Cadet Academic Recovery Program is fantastic for us. It also helps with our Pell Initiative grant for Virginians. That is something that is a focus on the retention and the recruitment of Pell eligible Virginians. And that program and using their first quarter grades is huge for that grant as well. So that is a really big coordination piece. And I'm thankful for the MAC for doing. And then we are doing that software implementation. This is retention software. There are efforts across post. This is nothing new. We have various people that help with retention, the Commandant staff, Miller Academic Center, just to name a few. But what we don't have is a way to coordinate all of that together. This software will allow us to do that, but it will also allow us to track them at the time that they apply for admissions, if they're going to be at risk, moderate risk, medium risk, high risk. So we can have earlier intervention from the time they actually apply to VMI. And it'll track it post-wide. So there's more to come on that. We're in the development stage. And so that's just a lot of analysis and research on what we need. In terms of financial aid, you have several potential changes to the programming. The One Big Beautiful Bill has some impacts that we're anticipating beginning July 2026 with DOD or UW now. The PUT and ROTC scholarships, the campus-based scholarships, that is 18 to 20 that we lose during our peak enrollment cycle. And the Department of Education in general, just some transitions going on there. If I can highlight with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the one piece that I'm tracking that I'm most concerned about is the cap on Parent Plus loans. So right now, Parent Plus, parents borrow loans on behalf of their cadets. They can take out more 60,000 plus a year. This change effective July 1 says they can only take 20,000 per student per year. So that is going to be an impact for our families who are using those loan funds in order to fund the education. That means for them, they have to seek alternative funding. That could be private loans. That's a little bit harder to go through. It's a tougher credit check. And they are many times they're not as favorable in terms of repayment. And so we're trying to anticipate that and kind of figure out what that might mean for our family. Recruiting landscape. I know we're all pretty much familiar with this, but just to give you an idea of some of the headwinds we're facing. The enrollment cliff is upon us. So our market is increasingly competitive, but there's fewer 18-year-olds. So I've used the analogy, there's the same amount of sharks, but there's less fish to go after. And that is even more true right now. On top of that, those who are of college bearing age, they're trying to determine if higher education is worth it, both from a return on investment and is college in general worth it. There's a push to trades, there's a push to other competitive online programs, things like that we're trying to navigate as well. I already talked about the ROTC scholarships. I think it's important to note that for the future class of 2031, that is when we anticipate those 3-year campus-based scholarships to return. Don't know, there's a lot of things happening right now, but that is the worst case scenario that we're planning on. And again, the one big beautiful bill. There is, let's go back, you're fine, I'm sorry. The one thing, that bottom bullet point, we haven't defined this, so I don't want to cause panic when it might not exist. But what that bill also says, if you are a full aid recipient, meaning you are a full ride athlete or you are on a full institute honor scholarship and you are Pell Grant eligible, the bill now says you cannot be Pell Grant eligible. I haven't defined that. They didn't say if you get partial grant or if you just don't get it at all. So that is something we're tracking as well. That'll be an impact for families who maybe get that money in their pocket. For full ride NCAA athletes, for example. So more to come. Again, that'll take effect July 1, 2026. So I anticipate in the spring meeting, I will have.
Question just about what's the percentage of directly out of high school versus a year or 2 years out of high school for folks that enroll at VMI?
So, yeah, so we had approximately 100 transfer applications this year. We had 29 matriculate. So it's primarily first-time freshmen. I mean, the 3-year residency requirement, especially if we're looking at transfers from within the community college system in Virginia or outside, it's not really favorable to marketing to transfer students. Well, I mean, but it's there. The population's there.
I was curious whether we know enough about, I'm sure you do because of all this data. Are people waiting, doing gap years, 2 years more frequently now because of the questions about the value proposition of college? Or once they've made that decision, are they more likely not to jump back in?
I think once they decide to take a gap year, it's even harder to get them to come back. We saw this a lot back home. It's a boom and bust economy, but they can go with the high school diploma and they're making more than a college degree. They were working in oil field or natural gas. If they took that gap year, it was incredibly hard to get them to come back because they're making a huge salary at 18, 19 years old. Same is true to an extent across all higher education. They take that gap year, it's harder for them to come back into the higher ed fold.
Not impossible.
Not impossible.
Morning. Just want to hit some of the highlights on these slides. A lot to cover, a lot of data to go over, but hopefully what you'll see, what I believe the data will show is that we were right on target to hit our number of 515. And we fell short, but we have a good idea of why we fell short. We've made improvements for recruiting the class of 2030. We'll hopefully stay on target for this class. So just a few things to point out on the funnel slide for the RAT Mass 26+3, 2,346 applications, which is our highest number to date. Take a look at 1,710 appointments and 471 full reservations. Any questions?
I know that ideally we're trying to get as many people into the funnel as possible, I guess, but is there a point at which we're resource constrained or that it's not valuable to us? We just have more things in the process that you all are having to look at or analyze or address. Like, is there some limit to who we actually want going in the funnel for purposes of all the work you have to do?
Not necessarily. I think the addition of the Common App, why I think it has value and it has served us well. It has posed some challenges in terms of opening access to applying to VMI and making it easier to apply when, you know, a young man or young woman may not necessarily consider us to be their top choice, right? And so that when we talk about through the funnel holistically, those applicants that come through the Common App typically yield at a much lower rate. In terms of the input in the top half of the funnel, we've changed our search strategy and our lead gen strategy to really go after young men and young women that have a propensity for getting the education in this type of environment. So we sponsored the joint, the J-Lab competition sponsored by the U.S. Army in DC. And because of our sponsorship, we get access to 160,000
names of JRTC participants around the country. And so that's a prime target audience that would want this type of educational experience. So we also do it in the lead gen space where we don't search necessarily by major anymore, although we do to an extent. We look at those that are interested based on test scores and GPA that are interested in either ourselves or a competitor. So we have a lookalike competitor list, the academies, senior military colleges, junior military colleges. And so we're really trying to, in that top half of the funnel, making sure that their input is quality. We'll try to move them through.
Do we have data on what percentage of cadets now in the barracks and applications that are from private schools?
We do, yes.
What do you?
Tell you right now, looking at our class profiles. Probably about 12–13%.
Private schools, 12, 13.
Correct. Yeah, and that's more or less been consistent when you look at, previous class profiles.
Do we survey those who made a deposit and do not matriculate?
We do, and we'll get to some of that data as well. We started using Colleague, our system of record, to track the qualitative responses of those that decided not to matriculate. So that helps shape, our strategy for the next cycle. A lot of data here. Don't want to go over everything, but just to highlight a few things. So for the RAT mass of 26+3, we had a 10% increase in applications. Remind you that we had a 74% increase the year prior when we implemented the Commandant, which far exceeded the national average of four-year public schools that implement the Common application. Average first-time freshman high school GPA was a 3.6. And one thing to note, and this is not new to higher education, but more and more schools are deciding not to rank their students. And so we had 52% of those that matriculated whose high schools did not actually rank. You can see the in-state, out-of-state ratio, 62-38, male 84%, female 16%. And then looking a little bit over to the right at the attributes of our matriculants, we had 37% that actually assumed leadership positions in high school. 73% played high school sports. 28% were in the National Honor Society. And then you can see the breakdown of the majors in terms of liberal arts versus STEM. What I think is interesting, and we talked with a few of our colleagues, as well as our enrollment marketing firm. This whole concept around return on investment of a college education is really impacting major choice as well, where young people may want to, have their hearts set at a liberal arts education. They want to be a liberal arts major, whether it be English, history, or whatever have you. But that ROI conversation is driving them to the STEM field. And so while the ratio of 52-48 is still, we're doing a better job. What I'd like to call out is the percentage of STEM majors that are actually majoring in one of our engineering programs. So I think we matriculated 125 RATs this August that are in one of our 3 engineering programs, which I believe is the second highest in the last 10 years, the highest being 126 9 years ago.
Question for Dallas, probably. The in-state, out-of-state there, is that consistent with how they're paying tuition?
No, that's actually, that's gonna be the data that admissions is gonna track, the in-state, out-of-state. Once they come into the system, then we actually know there's changes because some of them will actually qualify for a waiver for some reason to become in-state. So they may, on our map, still show they're coming from North Dakota or something, but they may be paying in-state rates. And so on the actual budget model, you'll see some differentials in those numbers to account for the actual in-state payers and actual out-of-state payers, not necessarily based upon domicile.
This follows, this is a great question, sir. So the 52-38 is historical household bracket for consistency. They'll have GI Bill or VMSDP waiver that.
Okay.
Last thing before we jump to the next slide, just as a national trend, and so we're not immune to that, is the percentage of young people applying for early decisions. So we actually had an increase in the number of early decision applicants this year. Our yield was lower, and our yield was a little bit lower across the board. But what we're seeing in higher education is young people and their families realize that if they apply early decision to an institution, whether it be binding or not, and binding refers to them losing their enrollment deposit, they stand a better chance of being admitted, because we look at that early decision period to determine how many kids we have to accept that applied regular decision. So what we're seeing is families are more than willing to pay $300 here, $400 there, $500 there, if they know it means an extra $10,000 in scholarships to overall, bring down the cost of education in year one. Right, so looking at the MELT cancellation data. So our MELT's typically around 10 to 13%, meaning they pay their deposit, but they do not matriculate and enroll. And so this year, when you factor in the number of matriculants and the number of cancellations after paying their $300 deposit, we had 568. And so we use a rolling 5-year average of cancellations as our methodology to determine how many deposits we need to get to meet our enrollment number. And we pretty much hit the nail right on the head. That rolling 5-year average was 56. And if you add that to 515, that puts you at 571. So we were right there. But obviously we didn't hit the mark. And so we're going to go into some of those reasons and try to provide some context, and then ultimately what we're doing for this cycle adjustments. 471 matriculants. The top 3 cancellation reasons, finances. That should be no surprise. We had 20 young people canceled because of financial reasons. We had, if you look at that third bullet point on the left at the bottom, enlisting, those were largely financial as well. The cost of tuition out of state was too expensive, and they have a propensity to want to serve, so they wanted to go ahead and enlist. Recruiting numbers being up across the board as well. Some of the recruiters that we work with weren't necessarily as willing to look at split options and things of that nature this year as they had in the past. But largely those 11 that enlisted that canceled, it was because of finances. So looking at doing basic and their annual training in two different summers. Yeah.
Well, if I can add in on that finances, that's after we tried in the financial aid office to actually help them and give them a competitive aid offer. And it was still, the gap was too big. In many cases, some of them wanted a full ride. I'm not going to come unless I'm on a full ride. Well, I can't full ride you, right? I can't do that. And so those are the conversations that we're having, that not for a lack of trying to go after them. It is just, the gap was too big from what they were willing to pay, sir.
And we reached out to the services to get what I'll refer to like a FY EAS list of people who are exiting the Army and the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, because the ones who good conduct qualify for Montgomery GI Bill or post 9/11 GI Bill, because those folks don't really have a financial, and they want to go to school, and maybe we can reach out to them, we can push stuff to them. They're already pretty much trained in the military. They may want to, you may get a hot shot NCO, wants to be an officer. I'm not saying we have a lot of success, but because they're older and they may want to chill out for a while after doing that. But do we do that? Do we get those lists?
No.
What's our age limit?
So state code age limit's 25, but we say in our catalog it's 16 to 22. So typically over the age of 22, they have to apply for an age waiver. So we look at that, sir, on a case-by-case basis.
I think
We could broaden that.
Well, I think this could be urban legend, but I thought when I attended here that they would subtract from your age the number of years you served active duty, and then, make the judgment on that if it was an age waiver. We could do something like that. So that's because what you're getting is a more mature, not a lot of risk that they won't be able to handle what's in the barracks. Now, whether they want to do that or not, a different story. But John Brown was 84, and he seemed he was 50 when he came. But I think the only reason I'm saying this is that they may not even be thinking this. When you start looking at it, and if they view themselves as, hey, I kind of excelled in this. Maybe I'm a round peg in a round hole. This offers me an opportunity to be an officer or just do something I'm pretty good at and go into business afterwards with the networking and everything. You know, that it may alleviate the financial tuition. It's my youngest son went on that. I mean, they actually make money because they'll give them BAH for the area that the college is in, so southeastern Virginia. So they're getting, some places, like my son's getting like 2,500 a month as a E5 BAH, Pensacola, Florida. It adds up. And so as a parent, you manage that. You get this, I keep that. But it alleviates that one attitude that seems to be kicking our butt.
You add that into the other pieces that we can tweak.
Again, we're talking inches, get 10 of those. And the Marine Corps says adios to 35,000 every year, and so I'm sure the Army similar. So, you don't need 10, 20 in your pretty good set, and they can use that bill and it's pretty easy. It pays for almost everything. And like I said, it doesn't pay for room and board, but you're getting, $2,000 a month. Over time, you could pay room and board. So we could do stuff like, you don't have to pay it all up front. You can pay it as you get it.
Just quickly on the cost of tuition and negotiation of financial aid. One of the things we saw this cycle was not new, but I think it was more prevalent. Looking at families, if you look at their financial data that they submit through the FAFSA, they don't have the ability to write a check for all 4 years at one time, but the discussion and the landscape nationally around student loan debt. My son, my daughter will absolutely 100% not take out loans. I will not write a check for 100% of tuition, even though I have the ability to do so, right? So that is, we have to negotiate that in terms of how do you retain the current core and how do you see the class. What we're seeing with some of our competitors is sort of this buy now, pay later mentality, which I think will come to bite them a few years down the road, where they are full riding kids or giving more scholarship dollars than students need just to meet their numbers. And I don't know if we're in a position to be able to do that. I don't know if it's financially wise, fiscally responsible to do that. So that's definitely something that we're having a discussion about and a conversation about across posts on, what we'll need to do moving forward to help seed the class, because finances, especially the 8 decided to go to another senior military college, a lot of those young people, it's the reasons were financial as well.
Couple of questions. What do we target for out of state? Do we have a target in terms of the percentage?
So for this past cycle, the target was, well, since we arrived, our directive was 55% out of state, in-state, 45% out of state. And so we came close to, for the class of 27, I think we're at 57% in-state.
Yeah.
43% out of state. It takes a few years to build a class when you start reaching out and you start forming relationships with people. So I think 60-40 is probably a good ratio. Because of cost, I think some schools are pivoting to more international students.
Sure.
So we're seeing that trend happen as well.
And I guess my research tells me there's like about 3,000 private schools in the United States. Is that about right?
Yes.
Approximately. Do we hit all those?
Not all in person, sir. We execute about 350 to 400 recruiting events per year, up from about 200 a year when we started. Now we utilize, or we can reach them through targeted marketing or through lead generation, name purchasing. So we utilize the College Board, so SAT, AP exams to purchase names, and Core with ACT. Other platforms as well, where we can make sure that we're casting a wide net. But we still, when we're casting that wide net, want to be strategic about,
Sure.
In terms of major and GPA, it's a lot easier to recruit a young man or a young woman that wants this type of educational experience and then coach them, counsel them on major selection, rather than find an engineering major and convince them that this is the right type of environment for them.
Do you think in that space, there's much opportunity? Private schools, because there's money, that's for sure.
Yes, or there's definitely opportunity. I think that's why, at least with the military high schools, it's been beneficial to develop those guaranteed admissions agreement. We're in the process now of one, getting ready to execute potentially another one with Army Navy Academy out in California.
Okay, great.
So.
Good.
Questions? Just a historical look at Melt. So you can kind of see the difference between the two lines, the total number of deposits, including the cancellations, and then that red line looks at the number of matriculants. So the 97 cancellations was the highest number over the last 11 years. But you can kind of see there's almost this sort of diminishing return that as you get more deposits, you see more cancellations. Because we're again looking for the type of young person that wants a unique educational experience. So are the academies, so are the other senior military colleges and junior military colleges as well. But not a whole lot to say, but just wanted you to just kind of take a look historically at MELT. Again, we're typically 10 to 13%. We were closer to 20 this year. A lot of state schools in Virginia, they're MELT, they're typically 4.5 to 6%. They're higher this year. I've got my deputy at our deans and directors meeting today down at Virginia Tech to kind of ask a few questions. We're a lively bunch. We like to talk, and it was more or less radio silence during the month of August. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to report back. See you tomorrow. So matriculants by region code. So highlighted some areas for concern over the last 3 years and where we've lost matriculants, and then areas where we've done well. And so I want to focus on the positive first, and I'll look at those areas that are shaded in green. So when we started in 2002, we hired regional recruiters. These are fully remote positions, recent graduates that live in certain parts of Virginia because we want to focus on the Commonwealth. And so we had a regional recruiter in Northern Virginia and Tidewater Hampton Roads. So currently Tidewater Hampton Roads, Jake Sekarat, class of 23. And then we just shifted our regional recruiting position with the departure of our recruiter up in Northern Virginia to Richmond for the reasons that you can see here, where when you look at our Virginia regions, we've lost the most ground over the last 3 years in the Richmond area, going from 77 matriculants to 51 this year, as well as the Central Virginia region and the Shenandoah Valley. So we're looking at utilizing existing positions within the department, as well as the great alumni support that we have in the Northern Virginia area to make sure that we don't skip a beat there. I'm going to shift that position to the Richmond area. It's Carly Price, class of 25, lives in Williamsburg, but will cover the Richmond area for us for this academic year in terms of having a physical recruiting presence in Richmond. Just real quick, you can see the demographic changes in terms of gender. So the loss of males, nothing new to VMI, nothing new to higher education over the last 5 to 7 years. And then you can see the loss in student type in terms of we actually gained some ground with transfer students, but lost ground with first-time freshmen, specifically Virginians. Proposed adjustments for this cycle. You're proposing the expansion or looking at the expansion of Call of Duty. One of the things that we learned are other senior military college and 4-year schools with ROTC programs are offering the first year of tuition covered for 3-year scholarship winners. The data that we see from those board selection lists that we get from the different branches shows that the majority of our winners are 3 years. And so between the different branches, we have about 130 that say they want to attend VMI or VMI is in their top 5. We've already mentioned the position of a regional recruiter in the Richmond area. We're looking to address the losses in the Commonwealth through the lead generation and name purchasing space. We're addressing the numbers in low enrollment majors, and you can see some of those listed there. Again, by shifting about 5% of our names that we purchased through various sources to focusing on those majors in key battleground states. And then we've already begun work with the alumni agencies, Alumni Association, their outreach committee on engaging the alumni base more to help in the recruiting space, specifically out of state.
The final slide for you this morning is just call to duty update. So this is only for 26+3. We had 69. The majority of them this year were 3 years. And then by residency status, 51 to 41%. And your gender, which is actually directly on par with the incoming class of 84-16 in female ratio. So this contributes directly to those loss of those 3-year campus-based scholarships that we had. We have a budget of 100, give or take, and in the years past, we've hit 90, 81, and then this just shows again the loss of those 3-year campus-based impacts, not only enrollment, but the call to duty program. If there's any questions, we'll turn it over to the next.
Just thought I would just divert for just a moment. There's a lot of this discussion about the value of higher education that's out there. We hear that. But I think the board just needs to appreciate and understand there is data out there. The higher education landscape here in Virginia does a fair amount of surveying the population in Virginia, but just statistically, we know the outcomes and the value of it. So while we talk about the narrative that's out there publicly, I think, we need to continue to double down on our position about the value of the higher education experience. Best educated state is still driving, higher education is still the economic driving engine in Virginia. The investment coming to Virginia is because of the higher education system. Major investments that have moved in, that continues to be a keystone piece of the efforts to drive all that. 94% of Virginians still believe investing in higher education. 93% still believe a higher level of education still has value. 82% of Virginians still have high confidence in the value of higher education. Virginia was 77% with still a favorable opinion of higher education, and 81% still believe the skills that you need to survive in today's economy come from higher education. Graduates of higher education still earn 2 times the income level as those that are non-graduates. Higher paying jobs go to graduates. And here in Virginia, just, the higher graduation rates that is an overall, this is the system of higher education, of all the higher education institutions, higher graduation rates, strong affinity for the alignment with the business community. And many of you are aware of the Virginia Business Higher Education Council that lines up higher education with business and the outcomes. And then there's just a high efficiency of the higher education system here in Virginia. So obviously a lot of work driving towards internships and driving towards those outcomes and attention there. But I just think, as we think about the competitive force that Shannon and Joe face, we talk a lot about these forces that are out there. I think it's also just be helpful to be mindful, like there is value still in the higher education experience. And obviously we're unapologetic in our investment in that, advocating for it, but the data that's out there, and it's good to be mindful of the data that's out there about the results that it's producing vis-a-vis some of the narrative that's out there publicly across the nation overall with the value of education that seems to be undermined. The data actually shows the other way. It still remains a very valuable investment for the population. Sir.
General. What's the real number in the last couple of years in terms of graduates having jobs when they walk out the door?
We're still in that upper 90th percentile, the 97, 98% have employment within 6 months of graduation or in graduate school. And you all may remember this, just to follow on to that. We did higher education, Virginia did that survey to go and poll our graduates.
Yeah.
One is your degree. Are you working in the degree that you got?
Yep.
VMI led in that. Are you satisfied with the degree and you're producing like a useful life? There were 6 or 7 different things. VMI scored number 1 out of 4 of those other pieces. So in terms of like the productivity of our jobs, we're still producing the employment.
Yep.
And the other data that we're getting back from our graduates suggests they're actually enjoying their degrees and they're using those degrees in their employment.
That's powerful. That's very powerful.
So just one question, are we using that data in our marketing? Okay, because when parents, when you look at cost, But you also look at ROI, investment up front, maybe greater, return on investment greater. We need to kind of make that connection and point, so.
So Chev was here, as you all know. This is gonna be redundant for some, but they were here in March and highlighted their data. That VMI is the only institution in Virginia that had a positive ROI on all of our degree programs. That's another piece of data point that we are utilizing in the marketing piece of it. So I just, yeah.
6-figure ROI.
And all of that is in our marketing material as well.
I mean, we should hammer those points. And I know you are. I'm just saying that's. Like, believe me, all the 3 kids I put in, I didn't get anything I got.
And I believe just in terms of the hammering perspective, it's the point I'm trying to emphasize, like, we can't be lured into the national narrative about the value of higher education. The value of it, the data suggests actually the opposite of what the overall current narrative is, that's knocking down the overall investment in higher education. So, all right, sorry to digress, but I want to make some points there.
I say we don't need to win that argument nationally, because that everybody should care about it for everywhere. We need to win it for VMI, right? So I understand it's a little dicier within Virginia, but for all the marketing outside of Virginia, it's like you may be thinking not going to college is the right answer, and it might be unless you come to VMI, right? I mean,
Always.
yeah.
There's no guarantee anywhere else.
Value of higher education writ large.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
But it's just when we speak in the generalized about the marketplace and the wins that we're up against, I want to provide at least a counter narrative that ought to be familiar to all of us, and the tremendous amount of research data that's out there. And we see this general finesse become more and more familiar with this. We'll go to more and more meetings. Okay, transition from that now. We'll shift into the finance and budget side. Thank you. I just wanted to give a brief update on where we are as we look into the fiscal year 26 budget, the budget that we're currently in. We're about, obviously approximately a quarter of the way into the year. The factors that have shaped this budget are keeping tuition flat, our focus on affordability, sustaining athletics. This other piece is just the strength of the core enrollment, the enrollment numbers. Those things have shaped the 26 budget. And here's the factors that we're up against. One, holding tuition flat. We knew this was expected. We knew this going in, that there would be this, approximately $775,000 shortfall in the budget when we began. We understood that risk and, had some confidence we could work to that end. The second piece is obviously our increased investment in athletics. And so that's a factor there. The adoption of the 1/3 cube program certainly support all that, but that has another investment into athletics. We have an enrollment variance of the 471 versus the 500 for the budget. So that's representing something of, the tune of about $1.6 million and a differential in revenue from what we would have otherwise budgeted. We have VMSDP waivers. We talked about those at length. We tried to be very conservative, forward-leaning, putting numbers we thought we would hit. Turns out that program continues to grow faster than even we've anticipated. So we budgeted 72, it's 83, so there's 11 others there, sir.
I continue to be confused about what Commonwealth is doing with VMSDP. I thought after all of the hollering and screaming last year, legislature was actually funding that. The mechanisms are confusing, but the net result to the Institute was that the Commonwealth would pay for that. That doesn't seem to be the case. Am I wrong?
You're correct in that the state is funding the VMSD program. It's funding it at the lagging rate, number one. Everybody puts their numbers in, the program's going faster for us as it is for everybody else. Secondly, it was funded in the last biennium. There's no funding in the current biennium that we're going into. So we'll see what the governor brings forward in his budget and how he proposes to fund it in this next biennium. And whether or not his strategy will be something that the legislature accepts. They didn't accept his strategy last time, which was to, go after the 529 funds. So it's still out there as a big question mark, because what the funding was done was for the last biennium, hard stop. New biennial budget now, and we're all back in the fight with something that's out there with a mandate that is presently short of some things coming through from the governor's budget, adopted by the legislative side, remains unfunded in this next biennial budget. We all have confidence something will come through. But there's never been a dollar for dollar. It's been, okay, here's the dollar amount, run it through the formulas, VMI, here's your money. Every institution's somewhat short, but it's because the program's growing faster than people can anticipate. So just want to highlight here, it's not about the overall funding of the VMSDP, it's about the funding of just, we know that we have actually more waivers we provided than we would have otherwise budgeted. Finally, just the conclusionary remark is it's about a $3.4 million delta in the budget. $1 million of that is athletics, so we're working to attack the 2.4. Some of you on the athletics committee saw the strategies taking place to address the athletic budget and the markers that have been placed out for that and the pathway forward. We're in the process now of identifying other reductions on the larger VMI budget. So on the next slide, I'll cover that. We've got already in the budget $1 million of vacancy savings. We're going to work after another $1.5 million. We've looked at, we've already probably identified 500,000 of that already. We're continue to work on some other strategies, other operational reductions. Just meeting with 3 senior leaders in the Institute this last week. I think we've roughly found about $1 million of that and those operational, but we'll need to go further. We've also just got some of these other savings that we're going to be getting after. So we'll work to that end to bring forward as best as possible a balanced budget as we finish fiscal year 26. But we knew from the get-go, it already had that 775 deficit just with the flat, the tuition flat piece of it. But we'll talk more details in the AFP. Certainly can give the specifics about the positions and programs and other initiatives we're looking at, pausing or stopping as we roll forward to finish out 26 into 27. So it's a balancing act between maintaining affordability, the cadets, sustaining athletics, ensuring financial capacity for the current programs, and securing continued state support through VMSDP and affordability funding. Both of those two, the VMSDP and affordability funding, as I'll show you here in a moment on our government relations update, are part of our priorities for state funding. We'll continue to actively manage the budget. And then as we just look forward, I think just some things that just that overall landscape, which we've talked about, you've got the House settlement agreement, the opt-in out impacts as we look forward to 27, the RSD scholarship funding, the call to duty scholarship levels, tuition rates, and continued state support, all factors that are out there as we march our way forward into the development of fiscal year 27 budget, which starts in earnest here about the time that you all are back here on post as we're laying out a preliminary fiscal year 27 budget review and just get some initial comments. That's about where we're going. So just want to highlight that's where we are for the budget. We'll talk more details in the AFP. I think we're going to develop some strong strategies to go forward and do as best we can to bring forward and balance this budget. Take some heavy lifting and some big work, but I think we've already identified some significant pieces that we can get after. Before I transition to government relations, any questions on the budget?
Rushing. What is the, understand that we do our cadet census after drop ad or at drop ad. What is our number right now on the drop ad?
1,496 as of September 9th.
86 or 96? Thank you.
One other statement, if I could, was retention of the third class. Or retention of third class, how many fourths come back to third? It's historically run about 82-83%. Came in this year just shy of 80%. So if they've been at the long-term norm, we would have had about another dozen.
As we look ahead for this next session, this is a long session. This is the making of the 2-year budget. So this is a longer one. Next year will be the short one, which is, so we call it the amend and reaffirm the budget, make some other adjustments. This is a longer 60-day session. It's the budget writing session. Governor Youngkin will introduce the budget. And then shortly thereafter, the new governor will come in and be a female. She'll begin to adjust the budget. However, she determines and likely to offer her own amendments. We'll continue with the cadet legislative visit. I'll show you the dates here in a couple slides to mark your dates for that legislative reception in Richmond. But preceding that event in the evening, obviously, is the 30 cadets working through the halls, meeting their legislators and laying out, the case for the Institute. We're planning on going back to our pre-General Assembly renovation building levels, back to 30 cadets, which will be the full complement that we've typically done in the past. We lowered those numbers during the renovation during the Pocahontas building, and as that building was coming online, everybody figure out how things were going. We're gonna go back this year with our full complement of 30. Obviously, many of you have had the first-hand experience and know how critical that day is to our overall government relations and the goodwill that's born. Higher education legislation. Here's what we're expecting, some themes. We're expecting Board of Visitors confirmation process. This group's very familiar with and watching very, very closely. We can expect some reform in that area. There'll be expecting some efforts in financial aid simplification. Meaning specifically, there's multiple funds of financial aid the state offers. They'll probably consolidate that. And I think that's gonna be a simplification the institutions are asking for. So that would be a positive reform that would come. The Freedom of Information Act changes, we'll see some pieces with that. There could also be just a larger omnibus higher education bill that could come out addressing larger higher education issues. I think these are things that we're gonna see. So as we get into the session and you all start seeing the bills, of course, we'll highlight the ones that are the most salient, the board to be looking at, watching. Obviously, the entire team here watches and works that as a overall GR team. The funding requests, our first presentation, that was in our 6-year plan presentation. The executive committee met in the end of June, looked at those. We've made that submittal, or our presentation. Mr. Gotwell, present for that presentation, to the Op 6. It's the Op 6, not the 6-pack. Whatever, the Op 6, the group that we present that to. Here's the key pieces, obviously working to push towards the overall support of the funding for VMSDP, overall affordability funding, translate into the financial aid or more money in the base to support and offset tuition increases, mission-ready facilities, and mentioning our programs, and then funds towards our overall SACS accreditation and this QEP piece, which the dean talked briefly about. From a capital, we're going to move forward, emphasizing the full funding, the construction phase funding for the CLE Phase 2 capital project. Then after the budget's introduced in December, we'll see what the landscape looks like. We'll learn a lot as we get through the visits for this fall, many of which have happened, some are planned and others underway. We'll get a better feel for actually what we feel like the legislative side has appetite for. We'll refine that further, take those amendments through and work those through the session. Timeline. Highlight here, 19 February, if you just note that on your calendars. It's a great opportunity to be in Richmond on that date and for that evening. To the extent that your travel can support it, big event. Also there with the cadets visit, you sort of see the timeline there. Somewhere about the end of April. The final feel for that, obviously, that is our last piece of information, bringing forward the budget to you all for adoption in May. April meeting. Just some of the visits, activities that are underway. Some of you have been intimately involved in these discussions, and others intimately involved in actually making some of the visits. With the General Assembly leadership, we've got some meetings in the books with the current administration, some which have already occurred and others underway. Legislative committee staff, key staffers in the central agencies, key committee chairmen, our local state legislators that represent us, that will patron and carry our amendments, and just the transition team for the governor-elect. So that will be a lot of effort here post-election, leading this, supporting this particular effort. I think some of the things is obviously introducing a new superintendent, address any concerns of the General Assembly leadership, and then just work our funding requests. There's some of the big high-level pieces we'll be working as we launch into this fall and through the legislative session. Questions for me?
Good job.
Go ahead.
Morning, Carl Evans and other board members. Happy to be here entering year 2. Everything is not a discovery and surprise this year. I think the core and I have gotten to learn one another. We'll start with this slide that you're accustomed to seeing right out the to explain where we were at from a spring of 25 disciplinary status. So What I want to highlight is I've added kind of a historical in there in the blue font. You will see the 2 prior semesters, so it takes you back a year in time, back to where we were at in the spring of 24 as well. And you'll see as we trend down in those blue statistics, we are showing progress in the right direction. We had a spike last fall, in the fall of 24, as we introduced a little more compliance in terms of assessment. We've increased the number of room inspections, and I think we're beginning to find a normalization, and especially the core coming online in over 54, or nearly 54% of our cadets were at 20 or fewer demerits last semester, which I think shows we're heading in the right direction. That being said, we did have some significant events last year, resulting in suspensions and dismissals during the course of the semester. So there were 7 suspensions and 2 dismissals during the semester, as well as we have cadets entering on conduct probation this semester at 41, which again is trending in the right direction right now. We've gone down in the number of cadets coming back on conduct probation for the last 2 semesters.
Are any of those cadets on conduct probation and academic probation?
There are, I would say, at least a third to half. I would have to pull out the exact list, but there is definitely
There's a handful.
there are, when you're in one quicksand, you tend to trend in the other. And that's really what we're trying to get after at the TAC level, especially. You'll note that 2/3 in both categories, above 75 and above 100, is our rats. And that's where you tend to see that overlap of academic quicksand as well as demerit quicksands. So from our company TAC levels, that's something that we are really stressing this year to try to get after, especially complement the dean and the academic piece, trying to get them off to a good start. So the dean introduced a first grading period assessment. So next week, all my TACs will know who are my below 2.0 cadets 25% of the way through. And that's really where we need to vector them to the resources, because it won't get any better at midterms if we don't act now. So that's really what we're focused on. Any questions on this overarching slide before I move on to the next slide?
Just an observation that of those with more than 100 demerits, if you take the academic ones out and the ones that left for various reasons, of the ones that want to return, it seems like most are still allowed to return.
That they are earning their way back. A lot of those cadets had to demonstrate progress in the 4th demerit period, and they marched a whole bunch of penalty tours. So they were given metrics to earn their way back for the 10 that earned their way back. That's the censor. They are on the limits that we talked about in the last meeting. If they exceed those limits, the day that happens is the day their semester here is done, and they will be on suspension for this semester plus the next.
And I told every class when I talked to them that, well, just so it's clear, if the Commandant brings you across the parade ground to my office, I'm not inclined, I will send you back to PAC. I'm not gonna be inclined to waive any of them. So I'm supporting him in what he's doing, and fine, even though there's a lot of concern, obviously, with numbers in barracks and people who are paying. That's just, if you're an incorrigible, which is how I define it, didn't kidnap you, wanted to come here, you can't live by our standards. And we've done all the things that he does to try to get you in the straight and narrow, and you still can't get there. You need to go someplace else. Last time amnesty was granted.
The governor was last here in December of 24.
It's coming back.
So I did talk with his staff when I was there, and I would say the conduct probation is gonna be something that we would like to discuss in penalty tours, because penalty tours, I learned in the spring, once we reintroduced mandatory, had become something that was not necessarily seen as an inconvenience since it was in my day, because they had a history of those disappearing, penalty tours disappearing every time.
The M14 has a tendency to clarify the mind.
Well, it was, the demerits, our penalty tours appeared to be much like monopoly money. It was something that would go away as quickly as it was. But the governor not coming and granting amnesty, implementing the mandatory penalty tour sessions again, I think we're getting traction there. And again, that's where we're starting to emphasize that. Seeing how this semester goes, I also may talk to the superintendent about expanding the mandatory period. Pretty similar statistics to the top 6 from last semester. And if you note, it's the basic blocking and tackling at the individual level that some of our cadets are struggling with. So these are the numbers of times a cadet was placed on report. That does not necessarily mean that all of those instances resulted in any type of demerits or penalty tours. May have been gotten a special for being missing a class. It was the section marcher not doing their job correctly and you had a special scratch. So, but these are numbers of incidents. And again, these are the things with the cadets, absence and late. And that's an individual opportunity to execute to our standard. And that's really what we're focusing in on, is trying to get our cadets in the right place at the right time. Matriculation highlights started at 471. We are 28 down right now, which is about tracking with last year, but we are starting the semester 27 lighter than last year. So essentially what I've kind of described to General Furness is our rate is decent at 5.9%. We are tracking better than our counterparts at the Citadel in terms of their attrition rate to this point, talking with my counterpart there. But I kind of see it as we're further down the track in terms of total numbers. So last year, if I were to put the total number in barracks right now of rats, it's closer towards Christmas furlough in terms of the number of rats currently still in there. When it comes to the new cadet retention center, I think those statistics bore the fruit of what we're looking for. The way we get that engagement and we limit the amount of time they're out of training, we are successful in retaining them. The more apt, the more time they spend out, as you see in those more than once statistics, it bears that fruit of the longer they're comfortable outside of the company and training, the more apt they are to go down that path. So I think the new cadet retention center engagement coming from whole of institute, it can be the academic side, the new cadet side, the tax side. We bring all those people in to talk to it, and a lot of it is done to try to get them to stay on board. Medical response statistics.
Looking at those 2 bullets, so make sure I'm reading this right.
So we had
That retention center saw 53,
Yes.
and of those 53, 11 came.
on those 53 first contacts, first reports, 14.
Are the 14 and the 7 the
Yeah,
same?
they
population?
overlap.
Okay,
They overlap.
thank you.
So only 7 of those 53 first contacts actually walked on the first time in the center. The other 7 were sometimes up to 4 contacts.
Said it a different way, if you only went to the new cadet center once, that's 7 out of 42.
Wait, doing the math again.
Yes,
So how many rats departed who never engaged with the new cadet?
everybody goes through the new retention center. We had 1 who went within the first 12 hours. We want a medical furlough because theoretically we may see that individual try again. On the medical statistics, they're up. What I would like to say here is we would like to try to get our incoming rats to be more physically prepared upon their arrival here. Because again, the time that they may spend on the GIM is not the full time with the company, that full time to come together as a cohesive group. They become a little bit lagging in their building of the relationships and they begin to feel a little isolated from the other rats because they're not completing all the activities. So we have put out an optional PT program, went out last year. They do take a physical assessment for me before arrival. That went out a little late last year as we were coming up with the new physical training program. So only about 70% of the class sent me any matriculants sent me data on their physical fitness. Most of that 70% that did was involved in STP. And we did see lower trends of those that did STP in terms of their struggling physically upon getting there. Not as high as you would think, but they were more apt to not need medical attention during that first week if they attended STP. If we go through open house sessions, I will be using those statistics to parents to talk about the need for physical preparedness when you show up with VMI for the training mission. So the key initiative that we're implementing this year, we've talked previously about the fitness program that is implemented. It will take us a year, this academic year, to introduce the core and implement all aspects of it. So the two major elements that go along with it is if you are not meeting the standard in any of 4 categories, whether it's your the push-up component or equivalent, your sit-up component or equivalent, depending on your service test, and your time to run, depending on your service test, and the body fat waist measurement, if you're not meeting those 4 standards, any of the 4 or all of the 4, you enter what's called the fitness improvement program. There's specific counseling requirements, there's setting of goals. You remain in the fitness improvement program until you pass all of your elements. You meet your goals, you remain in FIP. So that next semester is when we fully implement. We did not fully implement this year because I need nutritional services on site and have a nutritionist to be able to do that part of that physical improvement plan. In the fall of next year, we will enter into a fitness probation status. That would be a person that is in fitness improvement program, but does not meet goals and is not making sustained improvements. So the goal is to have them improve the FIP program each semester, getting them to where they graduate from the program. Results thus far, since we've taken in transition to the non-commissioning code, that's taking the new VFT, the results look fairly good thus far. Of 203 non-commissioning cadets that have taken it, 170 have passed. The pass rate is 88%. If you do not pass that, you end up getting to spend Tuesday and Thursday mornings with myself and a structured program to where we're trying to encourage them to graduate from that program this semester before they enter a fitness improvement program next semester. Any questions on our fitness program?
Are all of those upperclassmen?
These would be, yes, sir, primarily force our first and second classmen. There are a sprinkling of thirds and 1 or 2 rats because of the international cadets that will not participate in our ROTC training.
If you were up early this morning, you saw them 18 around post.
That was mostly the Navy remedial. I had the non-coms were in the gym getting introduced to weights. Some of them need to improve strength in certain components.
What I would tell you is the thing that has impressed me the most is, you know, how much activity starts at 6 a.m. here all over the place for a variety of different reasons. And so I got up like once you could get your how soon you got out of the rack, and you know, I don't remember us doing nearly as much activity this early in the morning consistently as I've seen it the last week I've been here. For a variety, I mean, there's, you know, we have a cadet group going to a competition in England, I think this weekend. They were, I mean, they thrashed themselves. Like, it's impressive. I mean, they're kind of scary human beings doing this. There's all kind of ROTC work. There's the fitness improvement plan. And then there's just cadet, like you see some, like, what are you doing? I'm just PT. I'm like, okay. At 5:30 in the morning, you're up, you know, so it's impressive. I think, you know, the more we accentuate through the Commandant's plan, the importance of fitness. I have some ideas that I'll share with you later just about how we can kind of embrace holistic human performance as an area with what we can recruit to, you know, making you the best version of yourself over a 4-year journey, track all that to improve retention, to improve with physical assessments. So he can do that on day 1 and know, okay, Fernesh, you have a weaker left leg than a right leg, and you need to do these exercises as in addition to all this other stuff, so we can prevent you from getting injured. And those are things that are entirely like every service does in order to keep people in training, because it's the same thing here. And for the Marine Corps, if you go to Marine Infantry school down at Camp Lejeune or Camp Pendleton, and you start dropping from training because of an injury, chances are you're going to quit, okay, or you're going to trip out. And we don't want that. And lost training days, longer training pipeline, it's nothing good happens there. So these are things the services have been doing for about, in some cases, 2 decades. And the science of this is proven, and we need to leverage that. more holistically. It would help athletes as well as people like me that were in the Corps trying to get commissions or just, hey, I'm gonna go graduate and go to business school. Doesn't matter. You will learn how to be fit and healthy. Nutrition's a part of this. And so trying to integrate all that into one holistic viewpoint is important for our cadets' development. And I think it can, bring some of those, increase retention numbers across the board in a variety of different aspects.
Right now in our remedial program, the numbers are large. It's about 35 cadets that I have that are in the program. So we do a very tailored workout. I hope to drive the numbers to where I can begin to individual. Yes, but there's an individual fitness plan and then there's an individual program that they do in that morning overseen by physical training leaders and staff. And it's not a group workout, it's individual. That's where I need to get to for the FIP to really take hold and make targeted improvements in the places that we expect those numbers by the end of the semester. They're already dragging on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think they will graduate out if they're physically capable. Next slide. The next major initiative he launched this year was the mentorship program, a formal one. I did a beta test with 13 cadet leaders spread across class and regimental system positions last year. In the fall, I carried that through the spring, and then those 13 leaders did peer evaluations and mentorship for second and third classmen. We incorporated that across the entire regimental system and class system leadership positions to where cadets have initial and midterm or initial and final feedbacks. The first classmen are mentored by a staff member like myself. First mentor the seconds within their respective areas, and the seconds mentor the thirds. We're going to take this and hopefully expand it down to where the privates and the rats will be incorporated next year. So that's the vision of taking it to the final tactical mile, if you will. We also included the NCAA team leaders and barracks captains in this program this year. So myself, I work with water polo, football, basketball, and baseball. So I mentor those captains within barracks outside of the mentoring that they also get within the athletic department. Thus far, we're focusing on teaching them skill assessment and followership, leadership, problem solving, and risk management. Focusing on those things that make fundamental good leaders, especially early in their career. They know how to do that. And then the setting of goals using the SMART criteria, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based was another shortfall that I had as a young leader. Is I couldn't set my own individual goals, much less for my flight or for my squadron. It took me a while to grow into that. So the goal is to teach them to make good goals. And then when they become good leaders, they can do it at the next level as a leader for whatever entity they're in to get people to follow towards something and going in the right direction. So those are the major areas that we're working on in our mentorship program. Questions on this program?
It's a great program. It's the single junior leaders have the biggest problem in sitting kneecap to kneecap with the people they lead and telling them, here's what you do well, here's what you don't do well, here's how you need to improve. This is the plan, and then holding them accountable. So teaching people to do this for a 4-year journey is going to help produce leaders that are going to be far superior across the board, because I don't know who else is doing it to this degree. It's a great program. And I think once we start including privates and rats and everything, you can see positive impact across the rest of the crew. So big supporter of this with the
That's the last slide I have for you today. And any questions, I will turn it over to the better looking side of the athletic director at Commandant team.
his new gear.
Good morning. Rob, Virginia Mill.
Hold it.
All right, we'll start with the athletics update and we'll roll into the budget. Yesterday, obviously, we had our athletics committee meeting, but we definitely wanted to highlight how we finished in FY25. This just shows you a picture of how things look from revenue standpoint versus an expenditure standpoint. A few things to highlight from a revenue standpoint with our gate receipt categories for football and basketball and track. We were over in those categories. We also had an anticipated loss in NCAA revenue, but we actually received more from the NCAA, which was also something that was very helpful. And then from superintendent's discretionary standpoint, we actually received more than what was provided, that over the $60,000. So that was something that also went into our revenue. And I want to highlight the VMI alumni agencies is the support that the Cadet Club provides us, which is tremendous coaching compensation standpoint. Obviously, from an expenditure standpoint, basketball and football, a lot of it due to travel were two of the key programs that were over. We obviously are doing things now moving forward to make sure that we're looking at what we're purchasing and making right decisions moving forward. As you also can see, tendency is something that wanted to make sure you knew with the year-end bonuses, full-time employees approved by the state, that was also something I wanted to highlight from an expenditure standpoint. And as you can see, a bit more numbers wise, FY 25 on the subsidy. Just wanted to highlight FY 25. If there's any questions, I'll roll into FY 26. So closing out the main meeting, there was a board motion into the subsidy. Obviously, in July, General Clark mentioned the approval of the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 model. I appreciate the XCOM for approving that. We have started to execute 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 model. But again, the athletic department generated revenue opportunities and athletic department expense reductions, private operating, supporting revenue, and increase alumni social board funding. Those are the things that go into that. And again, as we're looking into this year, continue to be good stewards of the budget and work towards making sure that we can have a sustainable model. Have any questions? Settlement. So this is another big topic across the country for athletic programs. We created a working group. This working group has been meeting since we met with the XCOM. So I'm going to present you 2 courses of action regarding the house settlement. Next slide. Just so everyone knows, VMI opted out of the house settlement for this year, 25-26. This will be an annual discussion for those schools outside of the Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and the SEC. So this is something we'll have to do every year. March 1st of 2026 will be our next time where we have to make a decision on what we're going to do. 82% of all Division I schools have opted in. To recognize some of the notable schools across the country that opted out, as well as a league, the Ivy League, and as well as, I believe, the Patriot League, chose to opt out of the house settlement. So to kind of give you more of a visual of what that means, currently, right now, we're in the opted out side of things, which means we are not revenue sharing. If we were to opt in, schools across the country are going to lean on their development arm to help provide private support. So this would be something that club that help there. This obviously is a tax deductible opportunity for those that choose to give. One of the big factors of opting in is roster limits. So that's something, as we talked about with Shannon and her team, from an enrollment standpoint, we need to obviously think about that. We had a chance yesterday to dive more into the numbers with the athletic committee on what that will look like per sport. But as of right now, that's something that we're operating on. There is a clearinghouse that evaluates all third-party NIL agreements over $600. As you can see, that happens no matter what you do, whether you opt in or whether you opt out. And one of the things that we're learning with opting in, there is a rough cost, they're saying around $40,000 to $50,000 to support the new collegiate model. This collegiate model has been set up to really evaluate and be more of that clearinghouse that we just talked about above. Well, basically be the clearinghouse. That is what we're learning that cost is factoring in on. Obviously, with opting out, that's something not having to take into account. And then NIL compensation for all student athletes. That's basically saying student athletes and still have the right to engage in NIL. I used the term yesterday. I was a student athlete. I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I wanted to have a football camp back in my hometown. You could still do that. So the true NIL opportunities are things that we're still encouraging. The settlement past damages. Each school across the country for the next 10 years are losing that revenue from the NCAA. That's not whether we opt in or whether we opt out. That's just exactly how things are over these next 10 years. So a lot of things we need to take into account with this decision. And again, the working group, we're talking about those things, really just learning all the factors from all the different sides of the coin. So opting out, I wanted to just show you briefly a little bit more of a course of action. A pro is providing the ability to offer Austin Awards to all athletic programs and the ability to seek NIL deals. Austin Awards are educational, financial awards that we are utilizing right now for the sport of basketball as well as the sport of baseball. So that's something that you can provide whether you're opting in or whether you're opting out. A pro is you don't have to impose roster limits. So the way that the rosters are now, that's something you don't have to do. And obviously that doesn't impact enrollment. So that's just something to keep in mind. And with the elimination of the national letter of intent, universities that now have less control because of the NCAA eligibility penalty have been removed. So basically what that means is 2003, when I signed a scholarship here, I was binded to VMI, where now you have student athletes that may make a commitment and they could move to another school rather quickly. So that's something that we just need to keep in mind in this day and age. The tax deductible option, as I mentioned, and obviously basketball had some success last year working with the third party. So that is something to keep in mind with retaining that top half of that roster. So that is a course of action for opting out, opting in. Some of the things to keep in mind, this is a retainment tool. We had a chance to speak to all of our coaches, but we see this as an opportunity to retain, provide more opportunities for athletes compared to opting out. And this is something that could be offered to all cadet athletes, not just a particular sport. Just mentioned the national letter of intent. Opting in, it does provide more of an opportunity to have sure the commitment is there, because the PMI or the KEDAC club would have more impact on setting the teeth or the guidelines regarding even with an athlete, the tax deductible piece. And just from an alignment standpoint, if you're wondering, VMI and the Citadel, there's only 2 schools in SoCon who chose to opt out. I know that they are looking into this just like we are. And some of the cons is imposing the roster limits. We do have some sports that feel that depth is very important within their programs. And then there's a lot of unknowns still. So we need to be aware of that. Obviously, financially sustainable budget, thinking about all of those things are very important. And this obviously has an additional line item that will require annual solicitation to. Next slide. So where are we at and where are we moving forward? So again, this is the working group. Some of them are in the room. It's a lot of work. We've met with the NCAA, met with a few other companies that specialize in this space. We've talked to our head coaches. We also brought Shannon in as well because her voice is just as important in this decision. So what we plan on doing is, obviously we met with the athletics committee yesterday. Really want to get Finesse read in, and I know he's drinking from a fire hose on a lot of issues, but a lot of opportunities as well. So really just want to sit down in October, get the right people around the table and just learn from everyone's perspective and make a definitive decision, obviously with the general's blessing. But I went through this very quickly. Any questions on the House settlement?
And we talked about this a little bit before. This is an incredibly complex and important issue that we as a board have to be in constant communication with you on. But I'm always concerned, as complex as it is for all of us to understand, you know, how is this filtering down to the athletes? And is this a big distraction, a big stressor? Like, what are you seeing in terms of are they just focusing on what they need to do, or is it impacting their morale, just the ongoing conversation and the unknowns?
I think it probably depends on the sport, and it probably depends on the athlete. I'd say probably in the sport of basketball, not just here at VMI or football, that's a very big thing that most of those young people are thinking about. But also, you know, we've had a baseball player that had a great opportunity elsewhere, and he decided to stay here at VMI. So I think it's something that's continuing to come to be a talking point even at VMI. But I also think there's some sports where it's not really as prevalent. But in regards to just NIL, not so much the true NIL opportunities. There's a lot of student athletes that are very excited about doing more and, you know, having an entrepreneurial mindset. So I'm learning that it is growing a lot more, but I think in terms of what you're hearing in the news, it's really around those football and baseball and basketball, those three bigger sports, in my opinion, that it's a discussion that they're probably talking about with their coaches or recruiting. They're asking, you know, are these opportunities there?
Like, I'm confident if people are asking you, you're giving them very realistic information, but do you feel like there's a sense of a misperception about what all this could mean financially for athletes? That's always my concern, is that, again, the stress just kind of filters down a little bit, and or that there's a lot of extrapolation from one person at one school getting a certain kind of a deal, and it, again, distraction, stress, I don't know what all it could cause, but are you doing anything to kind of get ahead of the education of the athletes on what all this could mean, or
Yeah,
are they asking questions?
some of them are, you know, it really just depends on, like I said, the athlete. I know that if you were to talk to our coaches, sure, that's something that when they're recruiting a lot of these young people these days, that's something that comes up. So I think it's more becoming a normal thing when you're recruiting, you know, our student athletes. But there have been a few times I've had athletes just come in my office and ask about NIL or ask about things that we're doing. We added the NIL store. I'm not sure if everyone saw that, but that's an opportunity where our cadet athletes can have their customized merch. There was a lot of excitement around that. Few parents have been wearing the apparel of like their sons and daughters. So I think it really depends on who you ask. But I think that what I'm learning is most of the cadet athletes just want to be a part of something that most of the others around the country are.
I think part of this too, and one of the aspects of the opt-in, opt-out conversation is the amount of control that the institute has with respect to this. If you opt in, vice if you opt out. It's not that if you opt out, you don't get NIL, you still do. It's just kind of an uncontrolled landscape. Collectives can form for specific sports, issue those payments. We have very little oversight of it. People who donate to the collectives don't get tax exempt, you know, have exempt status. So, and we can tie performance in barracks to awarding of NIL, you know, resources. So if you're on Conduct Pro or your demerit level, you know, payments can stop, hold an abeyance. I mean, so we have a little bit more control in opting in than we have in opting out. I haven't made any decisions yet, but I have talked to, you know, our TDEC club members, of course, Jamal, coaches, Dallas. And so this is going to be, I mean, it's one of these decisions. So happy I get to make it so early in my tenure. And I'm going to, no one is going to be happy with, because there's strong feelings. I mean, I have a brother Rad who's on the football
Council, sorry.
Football council. You know, Greg Odie, I mean, large human beings who played left tackle. So the whole Richmond gang, you know, he does not support opting in. And so very passionate about it. Wants to be included in the conversation. We will include them. We will get the whole damn team around the table and we will air everything. And then we have to make a decision for the coaches to be able to use this in recruiting next year's athletes, probably by mid-October, no later than. So it's coming up. But it's a new landscape of intercollegiate athletics. And I think you either face the facts of, we may not like it, but this is it. And, I think a full academic or full scholarship to play a Division I level sport should be enough, but I don't get to make those decisions. So this is a new era and we have to just be competitive in it. And you're going to see this no matter if you're in Division III, Division II, it's pervasive. So lowering to a lower level is not going to help this issue. Of course, it may be more prevalent in Division I, but there are probably some really talented rosters in Division III that have significant NIL assets that's
Jamal, if I could, I ask y'all to not overlook the financial implications of the decision. Currently, we can't afford all the scholarships that we're allowed to have, so we're short there. We have a deficit on the operations side that we're trying to address, while knowing that we're outspent by our competitors in most sports. Alumni are already punching above their weight in terms of giving to athletics. We're maxing out families with the athletics fees, student fees here that are much higher than at other schools. And there's no question that there's a limited pie. So if we're raising money officially for this, where's it going to come from? And what about the other categories that we're short on?
well, it's a complex issue.
Driving on. All right, moment. So really excited to kind of talk through this a little bit. We developed a committee, to work on this logo. It was really cool. We worked with Old Hat Creative. So I'll kind of describe a little bit of the symbolism here. The Mo logo is the first mascot mark in my history in terms of an official logo. And what we wanted to do was embody two-legged stool. So obviously Mo represents athletics. When you think about who and what a mascot represents, the momentum behind that, you have the chevrons that represents the military environment that every cadet experiences while on post. And he's wearing act stars. But we always want to strive for academic excellence, which I think is very important. And then, we have what's called the Easter eggs. So these 11s represent, VMI was founded November 11th, 1839. So I think that's a really cool way to show that we didn't just throw something out there. We wanted to do something that really made everyone feel proud of this mark. The red, white, and yellow represents our colors. If you really look into the words, there's notches in there, and those notches represents the architectural type that you see in barracks and around posts. And then, we like arches here at VMI. So there's a slight arch on the keydets. So again, just a great opportunity to do something for VMI, not just athletics, but for the whole damn team. And the primary mark, I just went over that. We'll have a secondary mark. So what we're doing right now is developing some strategy and some policies on how we want to utilize and add some of these marks to some of our uniforms. The VMI Spider is always number one. Let me say that again. The VMI Spider is always number one. So this is going to be an opportunity to complement that. I'm connected with Sergeant Major Rubenstein. If the club sports would like to use these marks are for everyone. So really excited to just push this forward. We've been working with the bookstore. If you go to the next slide. If you go to the bookstore, and if you haven't been to the bookstore, if you want to purchase one of these shirts, go ahead and do it. But matriculation day sales were up. I want to say Lee Clark done a phenomenal job with working with the bookstore, which is Barnes and Noble. And I'll say that the momentum wasn't the whole thing, but I definitely think we helped a little bit more with helping getting these numbers up. As you can see, total sales for the month of August, 21% up in sales over the last year. It was a combination of help from the alumni agencies, as well as our team, as well as the Cadet Club when we rolled everything out. So I think that was a really cool opportunity where we all worked together to push this mark out. And you go through the next slide, it's just highlighting just some of the social media highlights that we had. Highest impressions in Twitter over the last 365 days. And obviously we were able to share the story. So it reached a lot of people. I took my daughter to the bus stop and I saw a couple of kids with the shirts on. So I think there's really a lot of excitement behind it. And we want to continue to keep this momentum going within barracks, but also within the community. So we're working on some coloring sheets that we're gonna put into the school systems and bring a few of our cadets and maybe even Mo to get the kids excited about that brand affinity. So any questions from an athletic standpoint? Last slide. And am I the closer?
Always, you're always close.
Questions? Robert G. Mill.
Oh, damn team.
Bill.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
General Furness, do you have anything for us? Do my colleagues on the board have anything for General Furness or his staff? I would just like to say, especially to the Institute staff, thank you. We recognize how hard you're working. I don't know about you, but summer already feels like a distant memory. Things have been going very well, and I think now that we have the team set, General Furness, you know, it's only gonna be better in the future. I would encourage all of you to refresh your memory by looking at the BOB direction statement. It nests very well with General Furness's memorandums of expectation for staff, faculty, and cadets. As General Furness completely on board, we'll work with him between the two of us to determine what his objectives and goals are. But I think you can say it's the pursuit of excellence and the three legs of the stool where we set the conditions for our staff and faculty to allow cadets to progress through our very unique educational, academic, and co-curricular education model to fulfill our mission to the best that we can. I think we're doing that extraordinarily well, and I think we can do it just a little bit better. So thank you very, very much to everyone. And with that, academic affairs is in here at 10:40. Lunch is in the CLE at 12:15. At 1:45, AFP is in here. Core Military Affairs Committee is on the 7th floor. Then we have the construction tour at 3:30, and then dinner after that. So with that, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
One announcement, at lunchtime, our information technology folks will be on hand to help you enroll in our dual factor